So I've just cycled here today through Bristol in the rain, but despite the weather, the goldfinches have been out chattering and there's wisteria out in the front of people's houses, and it's showing every sign of a very British spring. And because I'm a bit nosy while I'm cycling along, I can't help but have a look into other people's urban gardens and get these snatches of green through fence posts and over garden walls. So that's why I'm particularly excited to have come here today to meet someone who's created the most wonderful wildlife garden to get a few tips. Jane Krish was the founder of the Natural History Consortium here in Bristol, and she's had a number of environmental and ecology and conservation jobs throughout her life. She was the CEO of Wild Screen, which champions wildlife TV and film. But today, however, she's going to show me a bit about her garden, which I'm super excited about. And she's together with her friend, Sally Lister, who I quote is her wildlife gardening guru and a professional wildlife gardener. They're going to give me a few tips on how to cultivate a glorious haven for wildlife right on our doorstep. Thank you so much for showing me around this amazing space. So this is Jane, your garden, isn't it?
Yes.
And how long have you had this garden?
Well, it's been like this probably for about 12 to 15 years, but it keeps evolving. And
a mutable space.
A mutable space. First of all, the aim was to get as much variety in plants, not just for the aesthetic look, but for the different habitats, for different species, and to have flowers that are available as food for pollinators for as long of the year as we can manage. So just behind you, Kitty, is ivy. And lots of people think, oh, not ivy. But actually, it's the most fantastic habitat for all sorts of things. Loads and loads of insects, even frogs hop up it. And it has flowers quite late into the autumn. And it has berries.
A lot of people get very worried because it grows up a building. They rather feel that perhaps it's going to damage the woodwork, the stonework or whatever. Here, it's growing up a trellis. It's not going to do any harm to anybody at all. It's easy to manage. And it is by far the most important wildlife plant you can have in any garden. It has very late flowers, which are very important for smaller bees, lots of flies and insects. So it's providing food for the winter.
Dead, rotting wood, which might not be something you'd immediately think of, but I wondered if you could tell us a bit about that and why that's here and why there are those sort of areas placed around the garden.
Yeah, there's some old logs down the side here, and further down the wall there's another little heap. So if I come out and I pull off a few leaves of that plant behind you because they swamp other things, I'll just plonk them on there. And they're a great thing to encourage lots of bugs and beetles and earwigs and lots of creepy crawlies that lots of people think, ooh, creepy crawl. And slugs and snails, because of course slugs and snails are absolutely brilliant at eating everything up that you know, we always say don't be too tidy, because you can leave it for the slugs and snails. And then the slugs and snails are absolutely marvellous because they are food for frogs and newt birds. Yes, and
thrushes,
birds.
blackbirds.
Yes, and so one of the other things people worry about are slugs and snails, but I've stopped, thanks to Sally, I've been able to stop worrying about them. In the old days, I used to worry about them, and I used to have beer traps. I used to go out with a bucket at night, salt water, and I had no idea what to do with the disgusting mess.
Right in front of us, we have a stretch of lawn which has been left to grow up in the most amazing way. And we've got some flowers coming through here, some cowslips.
Cowslips,
What
yes.
else have we got in front of us, and why has this been left?
Because the cowslips are planted here, and I believe there are primroses as well, aren't there?
Yes, there are one or two,
One.
many more cowslips as it happens.
This grass is left unmown until those cowslips have set seed. Because if we were to cut it before that, the seed would disappear, and that could be the end of the cowslips. So by leaving them to go to seed in a couple of weeks' time, depending on the weather, The grass can be mown, and then the seeds will be distributed into the rest of the grass.
Just coming out here, this is a yellow rattle.
The rattle's good for wild meadows.
Yes, and part of the reason it's good is it keeps the grass down.
If you were to look at this patch here,
Yeah.
look at the length of the grass there, compared to this patch where there is no yellow rattle, you can see the difference that it's making. It's a semi-parasite. The roots of the yellow rattle are linking into the roots of the grass and taking some of the nutrients and some of its water in order to help keep itself healthy. Keeps the level of the grass down, which means you can allow the other beautiful plants to grow without having it all swamped with grass, great long lengths of grass.
Amazing array of frogs and newts here. How have you managed to create this kind of
Well, nature does do amazing things. We first had that far bit of the pond put in about 25 years ago, and about the day after it got water in it, a frog appeared in it. I do not know where it came from. Yeah.
It's really important, isn't it? Whether that's a bird bath or,
Yes.
I mean, it's amazing to have a pond like this.
It supports so much wildlife.
What can
It does.
you do if you don't have the capacity to have a big pond?
You can create a tiny pond and something as small as a washing up bowl. It does tend to be hard work, but if you're really committed, give it a go. Something will happen. If you can get hold of some water fleas, daphnia, from a friend's pond perhaps, pop them into your washing up bowl, make certain you have some way for creatures to climb out of the bowl, so have some grasses on the outside that perhaps hang inward, so some rocks inside. Just it's sort of playing in a way, but so long as that water is there, something will use it, even if it's only a blackbird having a bath. You will have provided something that's good for Mother Nature. You've
We've
created.
come around the front of the building because there's something very exciting happening beneath our feet. What's going on?
Well, 3 or 4 weeks ago, or whenever it was, Sally was here, and she suddenly said, "Oh, in that crack, you've got a bee nest, a bumblebee nest." And sure enough, there were bumblebees coming in and out, and they're Bombus pretorum, and I mean, who would have thought this house was built in 1939, just before World War II broke out. I think it actually was finished the month before, and so this concrete is as old as the house, obviously. These are stowed away here behind the hedge because this is garden compost. And what's brilliant about it, I have two, so that I fill one up, and it has things like peelings, apple cores, bits of garden leaves, bits of twigs, nothing too incredibly woody, but also what we call browns, so things like egg boxes, bits of cardboard, shredded paper, all sorts of things. And I expect some people now receive magazines in plastic which says it can be recycled. So anyway, this is beginning to go beautifully crumbly like this, you can see, and that's just sitting in there.
Well, thank you so much, Sally and Jane, for giving us all this amazing advice. If there was one thing that we could glean from this adventure around your garden, what's the bit of advice that you would say rules them all?
I think stop using any chemicals.
I agree.
Just get rid of them. No slug pellets, no spray for your roses. Don't worry about the black spot. If things get eaten, don't grow them.